So a bit of a different video today. So I thought I'd do one about choices to make in terms of people's journeys into downwind. So it got me thinking because I got a comment from one of the YouTube videos, someone asking when is the best time to switch from winging to para winging, at what skill level. And I also have a friend who's thinking of foiling and really wants to get into downwind foiling. He's seen the videos from Hawaii, he's seen people, riding free, and he's a surfer himself. And he's thinking, he's asking me, what's the best way to get into downwind foiling and what's the best pathway? And I think, what many of us who have been in the sport for a couple of years, who have followed, maybe not at the front end, but closely followed it, is that we started winging, and then the whole downwind paddle kind of craze came along. So we bought a downwind board. That didn't work for us. So now we're actually onto para winging. But if you were to have someone who's never done a sport before, never done foiling before, what would be that person's pathway into downwind foiling? And would it be different to what we've all done so far? So this is what I want to try and answer in this video. So stick with me and let's find out. So what you see in this first image is all the different types of disciplines that can get you into downwind foiling. So what I call hands-free downwind foiling, what I mean there is that you're able to use your hands. So they're in a way free, and you can, you basically don't have to hold on to anything, okay? Maybe you might have to hold on to a controller for foil drive, but otherwise, essentially your hands are free. So when I went through the list of what I knew, there's actually quite a lot of disciplines that can get you there. So let's start at the top. In terms of the wind-driven disciplines, we have the inflatable wing, which is probably what most people are using at the moment in Scandinavia. And the inflatable wing can only get you so far in terms of hands-free. You've got to keep hold of the wing when you're downwind foiling. And of course, downwind foiling with a wing is its discipline in its own right. But if you want to go hands-free, it can only go so far. Then you can use an anchor man. And in that sense, you can drop the wing and then downwind foil hands-free for a while. But of course, you're going to have to go and fetch your wing at some point. So that limits the ability of doing long downwind runs. And then you can also pair up with a buddy. So I think the person from Omen Foils has a very nice video about this, where basically there's two of you. One person starts with the wing, drops the wing, then tries to downwind without any assistance for as long as possible. The other person picks up the wing, flies down with the wing, and then as soon as the first person falls in, he then drops the wing next to that person, and the second person tries as well to downwind as far as possible. So that's pretty cool. But essentially, part of the time you'll be riding with a wing, essentially. So that's why the line doesn't go fully to the end. Then we have this Elvo foldable wing, which is a bit of a niche product, something some French man invented, but it's basically a foldable wing. And in this sense, you can basically fold the wing, put it on your back, and then you got hands-free operation to go downwinding. Then you got the K-wing, the plume from F1. So this allows you to free fly pretty well, but you still have to hold on to it. You can't really deflate it, although there are some videos showing that the K-wing can be deflated, but it's unlikely, I guess, that this would be used as a main tool for downwinding hands-free. So that's why I put the line in a more transparent gray. And then, of course, you got the para wings. So you got the single and double skins. So these allow you to get up on foil. You can stow them. Single skins are easier than double skins, but both can be stowed. So in the end, these qualify as, tools for the hands-free downwind foiling. Then you got the what I call human-powered disciplines. So if we go from the top, we have dock starting to downwind. So this is a highly specialized discipline, I'd say. It only really works, I think, in certain areas. People are doing it on lakes a lot. I've seen it being done in Switzerland and I think it's happened in Germany as well, close to shore. But basically, once you fall in, that's it. There's no way of getting back up. So that's why I put a transparent line. Then you got hand paddles, web gloves, and even prone paddling. So there's people in Columbia River Gorge I've seen who are able to prone paddle in, just paddling up on their board, you know, from a prone position. And then there are certain hand paddles, sort of big pieces of material that cover your hand. And then there are web gloves that are also being used to get you up on foil, and that would also qualify as hands-free, because then you can stow away those hand paddles. And then finally you got the paddle, a paddle to get up on foil. And then, okay, it's not hands-free because you've got to carry it in one hand, but I qualify this as hands-free. And certain people have a sling to put it on their back, so that would qualify. And then finally you have foil drive, flight lab, other electric assists, and these help you to get on foil, through power, basically. So if you were a seasoned wing foiler just 1 year ago, what would you have done? Well, the options open to you were a bit more limited, I'd say, than this year. So you might have gone down the paddle route. So you would have bought yourself a Downwind Supfoil board, bought yourself a paddle, got yourself a big wing, and tried to do some paddle ups. And for me, I simply didn't get there. The balance was too tricky on the board, and I just didn't have the patience or the time to try this discipline out. So I think success rates in general are pretty low. If you hear all the podcasts, people with a paddle background, people who have done downwind supfoiling, who have been on sups for a while, they have a much easier starting point. But for those who don't have that background, I think this is a very hard way into downwind foiling. So that's my experience there. But then if you look at this year, and the pace of the developments in the sport has been so phenomenal, there's been so many releases this year. I think a seasoned wing foiler wanting to get into the sport this year has a lot more options. So, of course, the person will start with an inflatable wing background. They may try Anchorman just to see how well they can downwind foil without any wing support. They may try the buddy system. And then one option could be to go through the K-wing. So the K-wing allows you basically to have an easier time to free fly because there's no central strut. And then from the K-wing, once the person's really experienced in downwind free flying and reading the bumps, they might proceed to para wings, single or double skins, or they could skip the K-wing completely. And then what I foresee is that once they've mastered the para wings, then maybe they want a tool to get them up when the wind dies. So para wings are basically useless when the wind dies. So if you're out there in the middle of the ocean, what's going to get you back onto land? And there, I think, revisiting either hand paddles, which are not really talked about much, but I think have a big potential, or paddles could be the answer. Now, finally, I think what's really interesting is what would you recommend a complete beginner? And here I've laid out 3 options. Say someone has never foiled before, but really wants to downwind foil. They've seen videos in maybe Columbia River, Hood River, or in Hawaii, or maybe even locally, and they wanted to get into foiling, and that's their ultimate goal. How are they going to do it? Of course, they could follow the seasoned wing foiler route by getting first an inflatable wing, then maybe going through the K-wing route, and then getting a para wing. Or they could, for example, just start with a K-wing. Could they actually skip an inflatable wing immediately and start with a K-wing? And I think this is realistic. If the person gets the sizing of the K-wing right, from what I've seen from the videos, the K-wing looks pretty easy to handle. It can depower. It's good for free flyer, and it could be a good tool to learn to foil. And then from there, the person could proceed to para wings, either single or double skins. Or the third option could be to go direct to para wing double skin. So if you see the BRM, the new BRM Pyre, and the chart comparison, the statistics are getting close to an inflatable wing, both in terms of wind range, in terms of depowability, and a couple of other different parameters. So maybe that person might just want to skip the inflatable wing and the K-wing completely and then just go to parawing. The advantage there, of course, is that not only does the person learn to foil, they would actually learn at the same time how to stow the parawing and have a tool already right there for hands-free downwind foiling. So I think that's really interesting to see how newcomers to the sport, whether they'll go the inflatable wing route or whether they choose different options to get into the sport.